G'day guys, Tills20 here and welcome back to Springfield. I'm sure you can tell by the thumbnail that we are going to be building some very fun locations in today's episode. We're starting to get to the stage in this series where we have so many great locations already built. We are starting to develop a really great bank of custom assets that have been made by a lot of asset creators, very talented asset creators who have been getting in touch over the last few weeks. And it just means that we can just make a way more detailed version of Springfield than I would have been able to do with what's on the workshop and what's within the game and what I can do with procedural objects. So a huge thank you to all the guys who've been getting in touch. I think this project's already exceeding my expectations, and it's very much from the support from you guys. And I'm really excited to see how far we can take this. I mean, how detailed are we going to make this city? How many references are we going to have? For those of you who want to support the project and the channel in any extra way, my Patreon page is the best place to do it. You get a whole bunch of extra perks. Your support helps me justify the amount of hours I pour into making videos each week. But it also means that I can get more asset creators involved within this project and invest more money within this series, because I would like to see how far we can take this, like I said. And it'll be interesting to see how many different assets we can get created and what sort of assets we can get created. For instance, a lot of people have been mentioning how cool it would be to have yellow Sims walking around. Yeah, that would be amazing. I would love to see Homer walking around, or Krusty, or Dr. Hibbert, or whoever. I think that'd be amazing, but it would be quite a lot of work. I know making Sims is a pretty big job, and particularly for one person to do. So, you know, we're just going to have to see how far we can take this project. At the moment, it's already looking amazing, and it'll be really exciting to see what else we can end up putting into this. Now, with all that said and done, today's episode, we are going to be building some really fun locations. Starting off with the Bowlerama. This is a building that I really wanted, so I am just super glad to finally have it within the save. So this building was made by Scientific Dube, and you can find it on the Steam Workshop if you would like to plop it down too. It's actually a super detailed building, and it just looks really awesome within any of your cities. It doesn't have to be a Springfield recreation. I think it fits in with a lot of different types of cities. But this is very much a classic Springfield building. Homer plays here, the Pin Pals play here. This is a very iconic building.
Homer, did you polish your head in a shino bolo? No.
So this location is opposite Moe's, which I think fits in with the story of the Beer Baron as well. That was sort of by accident. I didn't mean to place it so close to Moe's. I thought that this would be like a decent spot for it, being close to the downtown and close to like what is a bit of an industrial area too. Sort of fits that vibe a bit. But then I thought, you know what, like it being so close to Moe's, that sort of makes sense for all the pipes going underneath all these buildings and stuff. I think, you know, within like, if this was going to be in a realistic setting, then, you know, some sort of close proximity like this would make a bit more sense than anything else. But mind you, we are going to be moving a little bit more into a cartoonish vibe at least. We're going to be trying to do like a bit of a mix of cartoon / realism. So I've messed around with the LUT settings a bit, and I plan to do a little bit more messing around with it. Just to get the colors a little bit more vibrant looking, because the feedback from you guys about whether or not we should be using vanilla assets within this project was pretty mixed, but the overall idea was to basically mix up the assets that I'm using with some vanilla ones. So in particular around areas that have more vibrant colored types of Simpsons assets, then maybe use more brighter rooftops from the vanilla buildings. That makes a lot of sense to me, and it means that we can continue using a lot of the buildings that we're using, but I will be playing around with some of the different assets, particularly around Evergreen Terrace, which I will be working on in today's episode, but not explicitly. We're going to be placing down the church rather than the Simpsons house and Flanders house. We'll be saving that for a little bit later on. But I do think that that would be in the same location. But anyway, we're getting ahead of ourselves. We're not anywhere near there as well. Something else that I changed was the ground, like the grass color. I made it a little bit more vibrant, a bit more greener, and that sort of matches a bit more of the grass color from the actual cartoon. So I figured that would be a bit more of a closer match, but it's still somewhat realistic. So that's the sort of vibe we're going for. And if you have any other suggestions, please hit me up, and we'll try and incorporate it. But like I said, I'm trying to keep this area fairly industrial, but then there's also some of these houses that back onto this train line. This train line will be mostly passenger service. There is a train station that is pretty close to the downtown. Someone's already making that, which is really fantastic, that train station, because it is a train station that I think we really need. I didn't want to just place down any ordinary one. We need the real deal. But it would be fun to do a whole episode where we just focus on developing up a little bit more of a train network that was in a bit more of a realistic setting, because there's not a huge amount of like train references within The Simpsons, and the train station's barely mentioned as well, so there's not a lot of references I can take from it. So it might be nice to do something that's more based around like a realistic train line and try and incorporate it within this setting too, which I think would be pretty fun. I'm adding in another diagonal road. I wanted this one to be a little bit more prominent than it was before. I just feel like the diagonal roads within The Simpsons is something that I can't totally avoid, so I figured I'd make this a little bit bigger. And this is sort of this diagonal road is heading towards the downtown. It goes past a whole bunch of suburbs, and this road will eventually lead out of the city and head towards the ocean. Because yeah, we're going to be creating an ocean, because I do think you are right. The poll did lean towards making an ocean. Yeah, I do. I think that Springfield is landlocked. The city feels like it is a landlocked city, but there is definitely an ocean very close by to Springfield. So we will be creating at some point another town that's connected to Springfield, but is away from the main area, and it'll probably be divided by like a mountain or so, and it won't be massive. It'll just be like the edge of the ocean, but I do think that that would be a good touch. And plus, I think you're right. I think that if we didn't include the ocean, there's a lot of storyline that we have to then not include, and I think that'd be a real waste. So that'll be a little bit later on in the series. I also created a park. It's just a park. It's nothing too special about that. I just wanted to create a bit of green space. And then I just added in a bit of greenery on top of the kwik-e-mart, because there is that episode where Lisa is a vegetarian and Apu takes her up to the top of the roof, and there is that garden. So I thought that, we should probably include it. I didn't include Paul McCartney, but I did include this cinema that he did make reference to. Apu does say that he comes up there for a bit of tranquility, but also to watch free drive-in movies. So I thought that, creating a drive-in cinema somewhere close by would make sense. So I think that's the only time he makes references to it, but that's the sort of references we're going for. We want those like small little details. So please keep hitting me up with those suggestions. I read all the comments, which I don't know if I want to encourage more comments, because I tell you what, getting 300 plus comments on a single video is a lot to read, but I do really enjoy reading your comments. But yeah, it's really fun getting those references, and especially when you guys leave comments that I can easily do. If you say, add some foliage on top of Apu's kwik-e-mart, it's like, that's easy, I can do that. So yeah, that's what I've just been doing, adding those small references. It's also kind of nice putting in this drive-in cinema, because we are setting our Springfield in the 90s, so and like drive-in cinemas were a bit more of a thing in the 90s. There's a few of them in Sydney, but they're not that popular. It's a bit more of a novelty than something that people would do all the time. I've never done one, but I've always wanted to. I don't know if it's such a thing in other countries. I'm surely it's a big thing in America, but in Australia, there's a few of them, but they're not too massive. I know they were a much bigger thing, before my time, unfortunately, because they do look quite a lot of fun. Another fun reference I added was the bloodening.
Do you see what's on Channel 6? Yeah, it's really something.
That is one of the only other times I can remember a drive-in cinema being in The Simpsons, but I could be wrong. Might be in other episodes. If so, like, let me know. We might be able to add in some other references around there, but it's sort of fun just adding in just those small little details and moving on to other locations. So we are in another location. We are working now on the First Church of Springfield, and this is of course the church that the Simpsons go to every Sunday, and a lot of episodes take place mostly inside the church rather than outside the church. So it was definitely harder for me to find references that were showing the full church in different sort of locations. But what I could tell was there is a fairly big parking lot on either side of the church, and there's also just like a little back alley behind it. Again, not a lot happens outside of the church, and there wasn't a huge amount I could take references from, but I could tell that there was a fair amount of foliage around the outskirts, and it was within what felt like the suburbs. I figured it would be close to the Simpsons house, and that's why I'm calling this area Evergreen Terrace. But you know what, we might just have to see what happens when we build around this area. This might not be technically Evergreen Terrace, or maybe it is, I don't really know. You guys let me know as well if you think that the church should be in Evergreen Terrace or just outside of it. It all depends on when we start naming our suburbs and creating those districts, which I think would be fun to do in a live stream, which I'm planning on doing this Sunday if you're watching this when this first is put onto YouTube. Which is always on Saturday nights, 11 PM Australian Eastern Standard Time, if you're ever wondering when I upload these episodes. By the way, this building and the next building I'm going to be placing down, this was made by Die Hard Hunter. He was the first person I got in touch with to create these assets. He's also created the Flanders house, and he's also created the Simpsons house. So you will see those built in later episodes, but I'm just holding on to them. I'm saving them because I think there'll be some pretty special builds. But yeah, I got in touch with him because I knew that I wanted him to work on this project because I really love his creations on the workshop, and I thought that he'd do a really good job at creating these buildings, which he did. So if you do want to grab hold of these, you can find them on the Steam workshop. And if you do, don't forget to rate them up. Again, super excited to see King Leno's work being rated up so highly and being on the front page for such a long time. It's really exciting. I'm also doing some decal work around here. I wanted this to be super detailed, and I wanted it to be pretty accurate to what I could see from a couple of reference pictures I was looking at. I could see that there was a bit of spacing between these pavement pillars, I guess, whatever they're called. So yeah, just place them like that. I also drag an invisible path too, just so that people are using that pathway rather than going so close to the road. And I did create this as a procedural object, so I can make it just a touch bigger. And I do place in a couple of like spawners that people will use as a I think it might be a school rather than because there's no church within this game. I think there's like unique buildings that kind of act like churches, but there's not really any church buildings besides unique buildings within the game. I also had to add in the sign, which I just took from one episode. Thought it was a funny saying on the front. So yeah, it's always fun to create these using procedural objects and just messing around with what I can do with the different types of props that I've been given with procedural objects. As far as I can tell, there's only one wall that I am currently subscribed to that I can add those texts to, but I don't know. I'm pretty new to procedural objects. I'm really kind of making it up as I go. I'm not really watching any tutorials, just figuring it out as I go, and it's kind of working, kind of not working. Now I'm using the line marking tool, intersection marking tool. This is just an insane mod that just helps us just create the best looking intersections. But yeah, I just wanted to cover up a couple of the lines around here and just make it look like, there wasn't like a road that was technically going behind the church rather than a parking lot. And again, I did the technique where I placed down a couple of parking lots underneath the pavement over here so that people are just parking here rather than just having random car props, and I think that's a much better technique. But now just adding a bit of foliage around here. Try not to do too much. It's really easy to add too much foliage within this game, but I'm trying to decrease the amount I'm placing down within this project at least, because a lot of this project is about seeing those particular builds, and if I place too much around here, then you don't actually see the church. So I'm trying to leave a bit more open space, and that's a technique I'm going to be using a bit more moving forward within this, because I think I was using probably a little bit too much, to be honest. But you can see around that suburb, I was playing around with, just using vanilla assets. I'm probably going to mix in a couple of workshop ones around there, but I do think that the best technique for this project is to use a mix of vanilla and custom assets from the workshop. And that way we get a good feel of, the cartoony Simpsons vibe, which I think the vanilla assets do way better of. But then you also get a little bit of realism too, which I think is very important, because I think it's nice to see the city have a little bit of realism, and it's a bit of a different context to see Springfield in, but it's also, Springfield and Simpsons is a cartoon, and I think just going full realism means that we're going to miss out on a lot of that vibe we're going to get if we were going to go full cartoony. And, that realism and the cartoon nature of the Simpsons, I think is, a nice splice together. And, I think it's going to be fun to try and include both those, both that type of atmosphere. So that's what I'm going to be trying to do. And yeah, you'll be able to see that in a little bit better form within the cinematics at the end, which are almost upon us, but we do have one more thing to build. We actually got 2 more things to build. But what we're doing right now is we're building the elementary school, which is another build by Die Hard Hunter. I really love this school, and it is such a big part of The Simpsons, if not probably like one of the biggest parts of The Simpsons is this school. So there's a lot of references I could take from it, but funny enough, not a huge amount from different locations within the playground. So, there's like a couple of pictures I could take like specific references from and get an idea of all the buildings that are around here. But, there's also just pretty much a lot of the episodes I was looking at are just from one particular angle. So I didn't really get to include a huge amount of different references that I wanted to. And I thought instead it might be nice to get some ideas from you guys. So if you have any ideas of things that I can add within this playground or even the front of the school, then leave me some comments below and let me know what I can include, and we can come back to this spot. We might even come back to it within the live stream. Actually, you know what? Let's do that. Let's come back to this in the live stream. I think that'd be fun, and we can add in those little bits of detail, which there's got to be so much. Like already off the top of my head, I can think of things that I didn't include, which I probably should have, especially a lot of stuff that comes from those Halloween episodes. But yeah, a lot happens within the yard of the elementary school. Not a lot happens in the front as far as I can remember. This was coming towards the end of the episode, so I was sort of, pushing towards trying to finish this build rather than add in the details that I, usually add in as I'm working on them. But this actual location for the school, I wanted it to be pretty central, but also close to Evergreen Terrace. If the kids go here, like Bart and Lisa, I figured it must be close to Evergreen. But it also feels closer to the city than further out of the city. It doesn't feel like it's on the outskirts. So this is pretty central, but it's not that close to the downtown, if that makes sense. Again, let's visit this place. Let's visit the school when we do the live stream. So if you're lucky enough to be watching this on the Saturday, or at least a Saturday for me, then yeah, we're going to be totally working on this a little bit later on. You saw that I built the climbing frame. I had to do it. I wasn't going to. I was just gonna leave it, but I really just wanted to get exactly the right angles. I even wanted to get the same amount of squares and shape of it. So yeah, that's what happens when you start using procedural objects and you know how much control you have. that's a real kicker, because then you start adding in all the details that you wouldn't have done if you didn't have that mod. That was another reason why I didn't grab that mod straight away, is because I knew that if I downloaded it, then I'd probably be spending more time on things rather than less, because it's saving time. It's actually increasing the amount of time I'm working on it. Now we are working on just some other features around the playground. Again, trying to find references for this spot. I knew that there was a basketball court and a baseball pitch, a couple of benches the kids sit on, and there are some benches around the trees. Got some really big trees around here. These are grey flame trees, which I absolutely adore. I've only just grabbed and have been using them quite a lot within Springfield lately. A technique that I use just to make the surface look a little bit more roughed up is just sinking down some decals into the ground, so that the ground around where the kids play is a little bit more scuffed up, a bit more dirtier. But yeah, you can just sink down those decals a bit and you can get that really cool effect. You can also see people using that little thin pathway that I created along there, which is really nice. I love seeing that. It's always fun when you see people using the pathways that you create. And now I'm just adding in some houses and a little bit of commercial, trying to space out the houses a little bit and making a bit of a barrier between the houses and the school by adding in a fair amount of trees, which is something else that I can also see around the school. Speaking of around the school, we have one more thing to place down, and my god, how cool is this? This was made by Bad Peanut. I can't believe he made this for me. I'm so happy. This is so fantastic. So thank you so much, Bad Peanut, for making this. You can also grab this on the Steam Workshop. Again, thank you to all the asset creators who have been getting involved and helping me out. It's been so much fun getting in touch with you guys and meeting a lot of you guys too. So thank you all so much. But that is it for today's episode. Thank you all so much for watching. Very much appreciated. Special thanks to some of my patrons: Original Racer, Cities Elder, Van Simon, Aditya Polsu, Wendy Q, and Best Brendan. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!